Everyone, Joseph Varghese here, rulesforsuccess.com, and access this video with Ray. We're going to get talked about who Ray is very soon. Rulesforsuccess.com, a summary of his conversation and much more, transcripts, some highlights soon. I'm super excited to connect with Rey Pasinli, who I've gotten to connect with quite a bit the past year. We got connected through a friend of ours, Tim. Ray has an interesting background. He's an ex-rocket scientist turned e-commerce engineer. He's one of the country's leading experts in evolving social commerce trends and technologies, having collaborated with over 10,000 internet merchants in his 15 years of internet experience and beyond. So whenever people are watching this, it goes beyond. He's the founder of total-apps.com. Very, very unique background and someone I have a lot of respect for, especially because he's also an engineer like I am, and a reinvented engineer, embracing his strengths. We're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about how he engages his team, the power of engagement. We'll talk about that concept, his 4 rules for success, and maybe even some rituals that he embraces, habits he embraces each day to be as extraordinary, as successful as he is. And I'm just blown away by who he is, especially because he's at a stage of life where he's looking to give and add value. So pay attention to this podcast. Check out the summary, the mind map at rulesforsuccess.com, because Ray has a tremendous amount to offer in this conversation and beyond. Ray, how are you today, my friend?
I'm exceptional. Every day I'm exceptional. We'll get into it a little bit, but I've had, multiple near-death experiences, and when you're looking at death's door, that's a bad day. So when you're not, it's not a bad day. So I haven't had a bad day in decades. So every day is exceptional.
So you've had a bunch of near-death experiences early in your life, and you don't take any day for granted, and you do some unique things. We'll talk about some of that. There's water sports, things of that soon. Yeah. So how did you get on this journey? How did you become an engineer, rocket scientist? Like what does it look like, brother?
Well, my dad was an engineer. I originally thought I was going to go to school for business, but I'm a numbers guy. I'm always thinking about numbers, and ended up taking a part-time job for an air conditioning company, and got into the engineering, and I really loved it. So I ended up getting an undergrad in mechanical engineering, minor in mathematics, emphasis in robotics and automated controls. And I thought I was going to get a job working for Disney building roller coasters. And I instead got recruited by an aerospace company, and I got a top secret clearance, and I'm working on military hardware, and worked at these aerospace companies and got to work on F-22 Raptor, and one of the projects that I worked on was actually the International Space Station. So I helped put things in orbit, and you could look up at the sky. I'm like, oh, I was involved in that. So I got a huge sense of fulfillment and accomplishment of being able to see my work. But I hated working as a cubicle monkey. I hated being an engineer. I hated middle management, and I just could not envision the next 40 years of my career living in a cubicle hell, dying from paper cuts. And so I went back to school. This was the late 90s, during the dot-bomb era. Pets.com, grocer.com, Amazon hadn't even been created yet. Dial-up was the hot thing. I mean, 56K modem. So this is really a long time ago. But back in those days, it was the earliest days of the internet. And I had really a kind of an aha moment, epiphany, in that the emergence of the internet was going to be like the gold rush in the 1800s. And, there's gold in them, there hills. And so the mantra back then was build it and they will come. And, a lot of these companies got billion-dollar valuations and all went out of business. And the reason why they failed was they did not understand consumer behavior, and they did not adapt the business model, practices, and solutions geared towards providing a really good consumer experience at the shopping cart level. And so, kind of a long story short, I had a buddy of mine says, "Hey, help me! I got a business. I need you to help me start building websites." And I ended up getting my MBA during that dot-bomb era. And as we're working on these websites, I'm like trying to help these guys get merchant accounts. And they go apply at a bank, and the bank's like, well, we need 2 years of tax returns and P&L and balance sheet. We're like, this guy's a startup, he's selling shoes online, like, what are you doing? So it was another aha moment in that the tech and the banking, they don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
And so this is right about the start that PayPal was getting set up, and people get set up with PayPal, and then they get shut off by PayPal. People could charge back for anything. So there was a lot of friction. And so kind of a weird path, but I ended up hanging up my Engineered and my Pocket Protector and launched into e-commerce payments engineering. And I've been doing it now for about 25 years. And, I've had it's been an amazing, incredible journey. I've worked with, at last count, I was looking at my database. I'm actually up a little over 70,000 clients over the
Incredible.
career.
Wow.
And so, and we're dealing with a lot of emerging stuff and technologies, and there's lots of problems that still need to be solved.
So you got in early on, and I remember those days early. I also came out came out into the tech world around that time. Went to a lot of dot-com parties, and as
Yeah.
you mentioned before, a lot of those organizations didn't have all their I's dotted, T's dashed. They weren't doing things as efficiently, and of course, a lot of those companies went bankrupt. And then, of course, the e-commerce revolution, specifically, you mentioned
Hmm.
Amazon and other organizations. Very interesting journey. Like we'll go dive deeper into that soon. And I know
Sure.
I'm very passionate about merchant processing for other reasons too as well.
So,
Um, but I'd
so
love
the
to
credit
hear.
card, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'd love to hear your trajectory. So what happened along that journey that had you be disrupted? And you mentioned you got into a bunch of motorcycle accidents before our meeting here. We
Mhm.
talked about that.
All
Some
sorts of
serious
crazy
events.
stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that because me personally, when I was in college, I got into a car accident. The car
Hmm.
got on fire, complete totaled, and that had me shift from being a chemie to getting to technology. This wake up call
Yeah.
it was instant. Like over the course of the next
Hmm.
few months, made a huge shift. It was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was a gift.
Exactly.
It was a
Exactly.
monumental gift, and several of those events happened over the years after that. My mom had a heart
Yeah.
transplant. I was heart condition. People can find out that this online, it's all accessible, and they're all gifts. So what were some of the gifts that you were given around that time for yourself that had you kind of wake up, make shifts, and of course
Um,
you got out of that world of designing
yeah.
things for outer space. Talk to us.
A lot of when you start off, you don't know what you don't know,
Mm.
right? And you get a little bit of success, and it's really easy to have uh, ego, pride, hubris. And so, for the first 10 years of on my entrepreneurship, I made just mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. And one of the things that I've learned is that mistakes are actually really good things, because when I pay the price of a mistake, if I'm going to pay the price for anything, I need to get something in return.
Mm.
And so the return is the lesson. If you don't learn the mistake, you're not getting anything for paying the price. More importantly, you're more likely to repeat the mistake. And I'll give you a simple example. You get into you're starting to date, you're looking for a spouse, and you get into a bad relationship. And that bad relationship has characteristics that are toxic and unhealthy and whatever. You can learn from that and go, okay, I don't want those characteristics in my next relationship. So, simple lessons like that can be painful,
Yeah.
because you have to make, you're going to, the only way to learn is through trial and error. And when you do trial and error, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And when you make mistakes, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 step forward, 1 step back. So for the first 10 years of my career, I bumbled around, and I learned, and I made lots of mistakes. But for me, way back in the day, I started off as a little referral partner. Hey, buddy, I call this bank up. Hey, do you guys? I have clients. Would you be willing to take them? And then from that, I kind of transitioned to becoming more of what's called an agent. The agent's the guy who puts the package together, pricing, helps with customer support, and then ships it upstream. Over time, then I kind of grew and became what's called a registered ISO. I'm certified by Visa, MasterCard, and licensed and insured and bonded and all that stuff. And about 2010, I became what's called a PayFac, payment facilitator.
Mm.
So if you're familiar with the Stripe, Square, Braintree, PayPal, those are all payment facilitators or PayFac. Um, and so most of the people at that time that were coming online, the Stripes and the Braintrees, they would simply connect onto the existing bank systems and they wouldn't really build anything. And the end result was kind of a clunky functionality. And so I actually built my own PayPal engine. It's about 1.6 million lines of code and from scratch, and
Mm.
made a lot of mistakes, had to rip out a lot of code. But I had a vision, you know, and so I got into the payment facilitator space, did very well with that. And now I'm kind of on the tail end of my career. I don't want to spend, you know, 8 hours a day grinding. I don't want to do 22 trade shows a year like I used to. And so I have been fortunate in that I found 3 young guys who I'm mentoring, and I'm basically handing them the keys to my business so they can take it over and run with it for the next 25 years.
Mm.
And so it's really fulfilling uh, going on that journey. But you know,
Is
you're
that
going to
journey
make mistakes.
is that journey more recent as far as the people? I know you also have a larger staff too of 100 and some people you've hired over the
Oh
years.
no. So at my peak, I had about a head count of 50,
Mm.
and so I'm literally making plans every day towards being more and more retired and less gainfully employed. So I'm actually down to one employee now. And so I've gone from, you know,
Mm.
huge amounts of volume and stuff like that to doing what's fun, doing what I enjoy,
Nice.
doing the things that bring me happiness, peace, serenity, instead of chasing the almighty dollar. And, you know, that
Amazing.
was one of the biggest mistakes I made in my early career. I'd
Mm.
work 60, 80, 100-hour work weeks trying to climb up the financial ladder and make more and more money. And I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And what's the point of having lots of money if you're not happy? So work-life balance became an important aspect that I gradually came to want and desire. And
And,
so,
and Ray, you're also married 20 years now, and your wife also
yeah,
played an integral role in your business as well. Also, I know.
huge. Yeah, we were business partners. Imagine working with your spouse, you know, 8 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week, flying to trade shows and just, you know, we were in the trenches together for a good 10, 12 years of that time period. And, you know, she was a corporate headhunter and a recruiter, one of the top in the United States, and very, very successful. And then 2008 mortgage meltdown hit. You know, nobody's hiring. Nobody's going to pay, you know, $50,000 to a headhunter to find a CFO or something. So, you know, she was working harder and harder, making less and less money, and really kind of unhappy. And I said, why don't you come over here, do this thing with me? We'll see how it works out. You know, you're not making any money doing that. Come on over. And boy, that was a eye opener to have somebody come into the business and say, "Gosh, you know, you don't have an employee manual. You don't have all of your insurance ducks in our insurance plan programs. What about a retirement plan? How are your accounting systems?" Like, I'm a go sales guy,
Yeah.
and to have somebody with attention to detail expose my weaknesses, that was a little bit uncomfortable.
And you're married to
But
her
it was,
too, also, which is
yeah,
great, right? In partnership. Yeah.
yeah, good
Yes.
and bad. You're a
Yes.
knucklehead. You got to follow and do what I say. Oh my God. So yeah, there were some challenges with regards to kind of who wears the pants in the
Yeah.
family at times,
I,
but
I follow I follow all this. I'm a process engineer background, but I'm not as process engineer as people think I am. My wife
yeah,
actually is very
yeah,
detail oriented. She's a physician, top of her game into what she does. So I get that, and it's actually helpful. It's been helpful in our partnership, kind of
yeah,
like exploring different things and how can we be better. And I believe, right, this is my belief, is that you're, as someone who's great at sales, so the world of engineering, working in a cubicle and things for NASA, all of that was useful, but your core as a sales visionary, you're probably more of an entrepreneur mindset, someone who's actively looking for adventure, building things to get excited. A lot of my clients in success circles follow that as well. Also, a lot of them are entrepreneur mindsets. And what I'm guessing is that your wife came on board. She helped you become a better business owner because she
Yeah.
had you
Business
recognize
operator.
processes. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You know, sales are wonderful, but if you've got a, if you're trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it,
yeah,
you're not going to be very successful. And so, you know, I'll give you an example. We had like, I don't know, we have some like 35 Adobe Pro memberships on reoccurring. It was like, you know, $2,000 a month. We didn't need 34 licenses, but somebody had set them up at some point. And because,
right.
you know, I'm going 300 miles an hour just scanning through the bills, and okay, yeah, that's that Adobe thing again. I didn't even realize it, you know. So is that granular attention to detail that um, really made a huge difference in terms of our profitability and us as an organization to grow financially without having to grow with headcount and overhead.
Amazing. We'll talk about that with regard to strengths. So I'm a big believer. We talked about this before. Of staying in your lane, staying in your zone of
Mm,
genius. There's
absolutely.
so many methodologies now, tests online that people can take to figure out what are my strengths and how can I apply those strengths into the organization I'm involved with. What are some of the ways you engage your staff, people you've hired in the past? I know you've kind of downsized a bit because you're more a
Hmm.
business owner now. How
Yeah.
have you gone forward to put people in their proper lane who you brought on board your team?
So, you know, going back to my when I got my freshly minted MBA degree and hung it up on my wall, you know, I thought, aha, I'm a business owner. I know business. I'm going to start my business. I didn't know anything about management. I didn't know anything about how to work with a team. And so I fumbled and bumbled and I'll give you an example. I'd hire somebody, nice personality, you know, had some technical skills, could use a computer, whatever, and they'd start their job. And within 15 minutes, they would come into my office and say, hey, I have this problem. How do I fix this? Oh, give it to me. I know how to fix that. It's 3 minutes. I can fix it for you. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, now it's done. Same employee comes the very next day.
Yeah.
I have the same problem. Guess what? I've now taken over my employee's job. And so one of the most important things a business owner needs to do is train. So, more importantly, I also highly recommend having some sort of professional mentorship. This can be peers, this can be something like a Vistage, this can be something maybe like a mastermind. But reach out to people that are businessmen that are farther in the path than you that you can soundboard and bounce ideas off of. And so in my particular case, I ended up joining an organization called Vistage that really challenged my assumptions about how to build a professional, uh, high performance workforce. Um, and so when somebody would come into my office and say, hey, I have a problem, I would immediately stop what I was doing, look away from the computer, focus on that employee, and then I would use my ninja black belt skills that I learned, which I'll share in just a minute. So, number one about hiring is people lie on resumes.
Yeah.
You know, the skill set, experience, income, whatever. Throw that out the window.
Especially with AI
And
now, they can lie a lot
yeah,
more.
so the number one most critical factor that's going to determine the success of an employee is how good does that employee fit in the role of a job that you're having to fill. So let me give you an example. If I have somebody who is uh, precision, meticulous, can handle repetitive tasks simply and easily, likes stability, doesn't like volatility, can do the, you know, very precise document paperwork repeatedly, the last thing I want to do is put them on a high pressure outbound sales call type job.
Right.
Because after about a day, they're going to melt down, quit, and leave. Take the opposite. You got a high powered sales guy, doesn't take no for an answer. He's going to kick down any door. He's going to go out there and harpoon the whale. And you put him into one of those repetitive tasks.
Hmm.
They're gonna be half-assed. They're gonna be like, oh, I hate my job. This job sucks. I don't want to. So first you have to determine the role that you're going to fill. Next, you have to think about is what are the personality traits that would be good for that role? And then third is figuring out, is the hire that you're going to pull the trigger on a good fit for that job? So here's what we do. When we were hiring like crazy, I put a job board on Indeed.com. I would get 100 resumes within 4 or 5 days. We would scan through the 100 resumes. Nope, 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 nope. We'd narrow it down to 5. We do a quick informal phone call. Hey, how you doing? What's going on? What do you like? What do you want to do? How do you know, what kind of things have you done in your past? Just to kind of get a vibe for the people, right? Out of the 5, we narrow it down to 3. And then out of the 3, we would send them a technical test, which you can do on Indeed. Can they save files and do all this kind of normal PC stuff? And number 2, we would use what's called DISC, D-I-S-C.
Yeah.
And so the DISC, there are 4 personality profiles, and those 4 personality profiles are going to fit certain jobs, right? An accountant needs to be precision and problem solving. Somebody in customer service has to be a lovey-dovey, nurturing, can take a lot of heat without getting, stressed out. Your sales guy is going to be a D, dominant, go out there and kill the sales bunny, or you're going to have your, uh, people who do the administrative, that stuff that is consistent, same every single day. Those are the people that can kind of sort of in office space hit the red button every single day, day in and day out, and they're happy going home knowing that they did a good job. And so from the 3, we would quickly identify the people who had the right personality for the job and the job requirement. And I'll give you an example. We hired a guy. The guy had 5 years of experience. He's worked in the payment space. He worked for a top 25 company in the US, and he was just really unhappy with his manager. And so we interviewed the guy. Wow, we're going to set you up as an account manager. This is fantastic. And then I had somebody show up and say, hey, we do DISC testing. Have you ever thought about using DISC testing? Wow, I'm an MBA. I don't need your test. He says, no, I'll let you test somebody for free. Okay. All right. Give it to this guy. He's brand new. So he takes the personality test. It's about 30, 40-minute questionnaire. Do you like dogs? What do you do if your shoe is untied? I mean, it's just really kind of unusual questions, but
Yes.
it's very, very, very accurate. And so the test people who, these tests, they run about $75 per employee, worth every penny.
Yes.
For $225, I can find out the exact person I want to hire for the perfect fit for the job that I have open. So he comes back to me and says, you got to let this guy go. I said, what are you talking about? He's got 10 years experience. He's a great guy, a degree. He's personality. He's got charm. He says, no. Based on his personality, he can't multitask. What are you talking about? He can't multitask. I'm so blinded because of my own pride and ego that somebody is telling me valuable information. And sure enough, the guy didn't last 5 months.
Right. Wow.
Because he did not have the right personality for the role that he was doing.
Yeah.
So we immediately implemented DISC as part of our intake process, and the end result is stratospheric. And I'll give you an example. One of the most important factors in your company's success is going to be employee engagement.
Yep.
A company, an employee who's engaged does 100% output. He does exactly, or he or she is going to show up at 8 o'clock. They're going to go home at 5 o'clock, but they're going to do a good job and they're going to be conscientious. Somebody who is disengaged does 50% output.
Yep.
They show up a little bit late. They go a little bit long on lunch. They take off early on Fridays. They're doing Facebook during work hours or at the water cooler. They're putting out 50% of somebody who's engaged.
Yeah.
But here's the unicorn. Every once in a while, we've all seen a hyper engaged employee. This is the person that goes to any lengths to make sure the customer's happy, works maybe on a weekend or shows up early or cleans up the office and does something that you would expect only an owner would do. That hyper engaged employee is going to produce 150% output. So the difference between a disengaged and an engaged employee is 3x.
Yeah.
And the irony is
Yes.
70-75% of employees in the United States today are disengaged.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a CEO or it's the, fast food cashier. That engagement is going to determine your success. And there's a secret to get that engagement, and it's called ownership.
Yeah.
And so when I had employees coming into my office saying, "Hey, I have a problem," I don't solve the problem for them. I ask, "What do you think we should do?"
Yeah.
And so by posing that question every single time, they have to come up with the solution. And if they come up with the solution and it's their idea, they're going to work overtime to make sure the idea is a success, because they don't want to be seen as creating bad ideas that are a failure.
1000%.
Inherently, people don't want to be seen as a loser. So
Yeah.
you can leverage the psychology and just simply ask that question. Gosh, that's a really complicated problem. I want to hear what you have to think. What do you think we should do?
And it teaches them
And
how to
if
be more resourceful too, as well. And that's a
and
leadership. It's a
start
leadership quality.
thinking as an owner.
Yes.
And that is the ownership. And then the ownership morphs into engagement, and the engagement morphs into a 300% increase in productivity across the entire organization.
Absolutely. And I
And when
think you
we
mentioned too, a disengaged employee, even if they're 50% productive and so forth, can actually be very costly, because they're also bringing that into the
it,
culture.
it-
And
it's
right.
it's toxic.
Yeah.
It permeates. Oh, if Timmy doesn't, I don't see Timmy working late on Friday, I'm going to take off on Friday too. And so you've now created a culture where mediocrity is acceptable.
Right. Yeah.
Fire those people
Yeah.
immediately.
Immediately, right away.
You're not losing anything. You're hurting your business. And that was one of the other big mistakes I made. I hung on to employees for way too long when I should have let them go months or years earlier.
Yeah.
Rip the Band-Aid, get rid of them, bite the bullet. You will. I always looked at it towards the later part of my career that I wasn't firing somebody, I was upgrading.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. We've gone through multiple people on the accounting side, and the accounting that we do is very, very complex for a variety of reasons. And so, we started with initially a bookkeeper, then we got somebody who had a bachelor's in accounting, but really didn't know how to organize and do things correctly. And we'd fire them and we'd hire somebody else, and they'd do a okay job. But every step of the way, we were looking for better and better talent. Sort of like when you've had that bad relationship. Oh, well, I don't want somebody who's abusive or cheats or, can't, is insecure or whatever. You start to, you can always improve uh, if you take your time to find the right person for the right job. And so today our accounting is the best it's ever been in 25 years, but it's taken many, many iterations
Yes.
of
Yes.
hiring and upgrading and replacing to get the exceptional level of performance. I will not stand or settle for mediocrity.
Yeah.
Exceptional or nothing else.
So this is part of your company culture now, right? And I'm
Mhm.
sure your wife helped kind of craft part of that on her journey when she was involved.
Actually,
And
that was primarily on me,
oh,
because I'm much more of the people person.
and
And
you
so
are you would you consider yourself a business owner now? So there's operator, owner, the operator, as Michael Gerber says, it is kind of the technician having a bit of an entrepreneurial seizure. Are you at a stage now where you're focusing and doing the things you enjoy doing? And I suspect that is a case, given that you've got pastimes, you have systems in place.
yeah.
Would you say that?
So the existing business is pretty much on autopilot. Um, and so I've got one staff, I've got an outsource accounting team that handles all of that. I spend a couple hours a day on it. I got clients that call me up, hey, I got a technical question, or somebody will show up and say, hey, I got a big client that needs a special custom setup. Okay. I enjoy it. I love it. I'm really, really good at it. So I'm going to continue to do this while it's doing it. But I've kind of also become involved in uh, three, 3.5 other major technical pieces, companies that are coming to market. I'm very excited about what these guys are doing, very disruptive. And so I've become an informal advisor, board member, partner, shareholder in 4 other companies. So not only do I run my own business, but I'm also leading the charge and being that resource, that mentor, the guide to help these startups uh, avoid the learning curve
Yes.
and the mistakes that come from inexperience, and helping to avoid that 2-step forward, 1-step process that I went through for 10
Yes.
years.
Yes.
And so I'm really excited about now this stage of my career, where I have the opportunity to be of service and help other people and share the immense experience that I've gained through trial and tribulations and errors and catastrophes and everything else I've had to overcome over
It's
the
a great
last
place to be.
25 years.
It's a great place to
Yeah.
be. And there's a lot of fulfillment in that. I can experience that. I can hear that in you, mentoring others or
Yeah.
organizations, being involved in other ways, and having things run on autopilot. I'm curious, what are some things that keep you engaged yourself? We talk about employees being engaged. Of course, the word engagement, it's a lot of meanings to that. Engaged being actually doing the work. But for you, what keeps you engaged in continually showing up? I know you enjoy surfing. Am I right? And you do,
Oh,
and
I have a very bad surfing addiction. It's just everything in my life revolves around surfing. Where I live, what I drive, who I marry, what I went to entrepreneurship so I could surf more. That's
mm,
you know part of the whole journey. So yeah, I've got a very 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 broad, fulfilling life, and
yes,
it's filled with lots of different things, not just business. Like I said, I found out a long time ago that making money doesn't doesn't guarantee happiness. So I do all the other things that give me a really rich, fulfilling, satisfying, exciting life. Every day I wake up is like Christmas. I get to open up a brand new present.
I love
So
that.
yeah,
So,
but
so,
the key to answer your question,
hmm,
setting goals.
yeah,
And I'm not just talking about financial goals, right? I mean, I have very clear financial goals, but I have goals and metrics and being a numbers guy,
yeah,
everything that I do is tracked, recorded. How am I doing progress? So let me give you an example.
hmm,
About 10 years ago, it was getting to be New Year's Eve, and everybody's putting up their little Facebook, my New Year's resolution, I'm going to go to church, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to run a marathon, whatever. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, the thing that I'm really passionate about is surfing. And so my New Year's resolution is to ride, catch, surf 500 waves a year. The first year I
wow,
did, I hit about 800. And so I'm like,
guys, you
holy,
surpassed that number, right?
I
500,
blew
800.
past it, blew past it.
Exactly.
So the
Yes.
next year I set my goal at 1,000. And so I daily trying to go surf, and I count my waves and I do a little surf report from the beach on Facebook and I add it to my total. And so this is now part of my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I would say out of the past 10 years, I think I've hit it 7 times, 6 or 7 times, hit that 1,000 plus waves a year. I've had torn rotator cuff. I had a head concussion. I had a walking pneumonia for 6 weeks at the end of the year, and you can't surf. I'd be like, damn it, I only hit 880 this year. But it's a goal. And because
Incredible.
that
Yes.
is, and you have to think of goals in terms of long-term,
Mm,
intermediate, and short-term. The short-term goals help you to get to the intermediate, and the intermediate goals help you to get to the long-term, right? So now my new thing is I'm counting my workouts.
mm,
Surfing counts as a workout. And so, where my goal for this year is 200 workouts. So basically almost every other day I'm working out. And where are we? Middle of June, I'm at 97 workouts for the year. Right. So
yes. Yeah.
it's quantifiable, tangible goals that allow me to wake up today and be like, okay, what are my goals? What am I going to try and hit?
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as I want to get 3 sales calls a day. I want to submit 1 merchant account a day. I want to onboard $1 million in processing per month, or 5 million or whatever. Like, I have quantifiable, tangible metrics that are they're challenging, but they're also achievable.
Curiously,
And
do you track these things, and do you also have levels of accountability? You mentioned business before. We have several success circles where there's aspects of accountability in what we do. But
absolutely.
how do you track these things, and how do you make it fun?
Great question. So my management style was really hands off. There's some people who are micromanagers that, for certain businesses, you might need that. But if you give them the engagement and the ownership, you shouldn't have to micromanage. But one of the things that I implemented probably the last 7 years, 6 years of my career, one-on-one with staff. And so, in certain staff, I would have weekly one-on-ones, like maybe a department manager or something like that. What's going on? What are you doing for hires? How are your department? What are your quotas? And so the one-on-ones really aren't just, hey, how you doing and how's the kids? I would have an appointment in my Outlook, and would it be the discussions, the topics, the metrics, the goals, all the things that we have been working on together as a manager and an employee. So let me give you an example.
Yes.
I have a sales guy, and I might do a weekly check-in. I might do a monthly check-in, right? Okay. How many new prospects did you bring in last week? How many of those did you close? How many are you going to do this month? How many new referral partners are you bringing in? What trade shows should we sign you up and ship you out to? Right? So that one-on-one is allowing me to build in accountability.
Yeah.
And what's happening is that, you can have a boss at the top and they say, we're going to go in that direction. But if you don't have one-on-one guidance with the individual departments and the managers and the staff below them, you got the oars and the go rowing in all the different directions. So in order to implement your top level vision and goals, it has to be transitioned to each level of the employee chain below you. And the way you do that is one-on-one. So if I'm having a one-on-one with the customer service department manager,
Yes.
that one-on-one is going to have that individual with their own set of goals. Hey, we need to have hold times down to less than 2 minutes. We want 98% success rate. We want response times. This is a problem that we keep seeing that we want to get fixed, or whatever. They are going to then communicate that level to the people that are their subordinates.
Yeah.
Right.
Eh,
So
yeah.
the vision gets melded into the whole corporate culture.
So how do you? So I get the value of that, like having these one-on-one huddles, really clarifying specifics and those numbers, sales. How about yourself? So you've got these outstanding goals, right? Jumping the
Yeah.
ocean, riding these waves, and of course, in different other areas of life too, as well. Also, you mentioned business and having, let's see, one new
Mm-hmm.
processing client, or adding another 7 figures of processing each month. How do you keep track of those KPIs, OKRs? Do you use spreadsheets? Do you have meetings with your staff? I know your wife wasn't on board before; she was part of that before. What
So
what's your
it's
mechanism?
a variety of things. So for example, I meet with my accountant, my
Hmm.
uh, controller, for lack of a better description. She gives me a weekly cash flow report, and then we decide, okay, which bills are we paying, what invoices, debts are being serviced, whatever, right? And then once a month, she provides me a review that is a year to date and a comparison to the previous month,
Hmm.
right? So it allows me to, on a regular basis, be looking at the numbers and the performance of the business. And just like, if you think about it, when they launched the Saturn V rocket to hit the moon,
Hmm.
they didn't just light the thing off and it automatically ended up landing on the moon. They had to do lots of course corrections
Yes. Yes.
along the way to make sure
Yes.
that they hit the target, right? And so when we look at the business and the metrics, we're looking at things from a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis,
Yes.
right? The
Yes.
last week of every year, I take the whole week off. I look at the business from where we started, where we ended up, and where do we need to go. And I put in all my goals, KPIs, metrics that I want to hit for the following year.
That's amazing. So the last week of each year, you take off specifically for that reevaluation
Yes.
process for the year.
Yes.
Outstanding. That's a gem in itself, the way you share that. I mean, everything you're saying is on point, right? Like just the nature of two steps forward, one step back. You're always making
Yeah.
progress forward, having huddles with your team. I'm when my first job out of college was my second job at college was with G Capital,
Hmm.
and the whole idea of Six Sigma, but most especially the
Yep.
Kaizen principle, the idea of making 1% progress each day.
Yep.
That's why I love talking to engineers, because it's whole there's a way.
Black belt, Sigma, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yes, exactly. And the
TQM.
yep, and the idea of like measurable progress, right? And that which is
Yes.
measured expands or grows exponentially if you're measuring a Pearson's
Yeah.
law. And I love how you're applying that to your life, right? Like at this
Yeah.
stage, all
I mean, it's
stages,
not just business, it's everything.
everything. Yes.
Everything. And so my life today is really, really rich and really full. And what I mean by that is the business, the financial, all of that has hit all of the goals and the metrics that I wanted to. It's no longer about money for me, right? So every morning I wake up, read the news, check my spot my emails, whatever. Go through all my little mobile apps for about 20 minutes, and then pray, meditate. I either go to the gym or I surf,
Mhm.
right? So I take about an hour to 2 hours every morning to take care of myself physically and emotionally and spiritually, right? Usually come online about 9:30 or 10, emails, phone calls, appointments till about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And then in the afternoon, it's like, okay, I got to do some chores around the house. I got to walk the dogs, uh, you know, spend some time with my wife.
Mhm.
Because it's really easy for the business to suck all of
Yes.
my time and energy. So I invest in my personal life and I invest in my business, but I also invest in my relationship. Um, and so maybe we'll go do an afternoon surf session or, go to Home Depot and get that thing fixed that we've been wanting to do. So that way, by the time the weekend comes, I don't really have anything to do. It's not.
Mhm.
And so that is then time for me to spend with my family, trying to spend time with my friends. You know, we'll go camping on a weekend or we'll go do a bonfire at the beach or something like that. Or maybe, you know, uh, this weekend I've got tickets for Doobie Brothers on Saturday, and then Sunday I'm going to drive up to North LA and visit my dear friend Albert, who just had his third baby, and we haven't seen it yet. So, those are the cement
So there's a
in
lot of
between the
fulfillment.
accomplishment. Yeah,
Those are the big rocks. The big rocks is scheduled, and a lot of it's family time, morning rituals, time with
yeah,
your wife, ensuring that she's connected with, and you paid quality time with her. Those are the big rocks, and then everything else gets put into
yeah.
place as well. Also, when you start your workday,
You know,
absolutely
and
outstanding.
and all of this comes from, we're going to run out of time here because I know you got to pick up the little one, but the best advice that I can share is what my rules of success, right?
Bring it on.
Number one, every deal that I do needs to be a win-win-win-win. Now, in my business, I have multiple parties, but let's say you're a realtor and you've got the opposing realtor, you've got the buyer, you've got the seller, you got the mortgage people, you've got the title people. There's a lot of people involved in that transaction. So nobody should get screwed, nobody should get gouged, and nobody should get engorged,
Hmm.
meaning that everybody gets a fair deal, right? If it's not a fair deal, somebody's going to get pissed, and that will separate the partnership. Number two, time is money. Value your time. And what I mean by that is I value my time as $1,000 an hour.
Hmm.
If I'm out working on a project, I should at least earn $1,000 an hour for my time.
Hmm.
And, you know, sometimes I get a small little merchant. Hey, you know what? I've made enough money. I can afford to invest my time to help that person. But when I'm trying to build my business, set a dollar amount for your hourly and work on projects and events and things that will generate that kind of income for you. I could go down to the beach and collect cans and turn them in for a nickel a piece.
Right.
It's not a good use of my time,
Yeah.
right? So know what you're worth and command what you're worth.
Love that.
Number 3, do the right thing at the right time all the time.
Mm.
This is about honesty and integrity.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you tell white lies, cut corners, you will never achieve long-term success. I've seen a lot of guys go for the quick buck, but the quick buck is just a short thing,
Yeah.
right? I'm in it for the long haul. I'm looking at 10, 20-year windows of opportunity. I've had clients that have been with me for 15 years, 18 years. You know, the time that I invested in that client and continue to provide that support has paid $1 million
Yeah.
over the years.
Especially the referrals, because I know that
Exactly.
relationships
You
really
know,
key in. Absolutely.
so do the right thing at the right time, all the time.
Mm.
And the last one is don't stop having fun.
Mm.
Because
Mm.
if you're not having
Amen.
fun, business is sort of like sex. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. I'm just that's the best analogy I can have with you,
Exactly.
right? So
Yes. Yes.
so so having fun
Yes.
means that you're going to get the maximum benefit out of it. If you're just chasing the dollar, you're going to be miserable. I was miserable
Yeah. Yes.
in my life. I
Yes.
lost friendships. I wasn't surfing. I wasn't healthy. Um, and every day I just woke up and the only thing I had to look forward to was doing sales calls. That's who cares? Nobody will remember you on your deathbed on how many sales calls you made a day.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
You,
that's my
you,
secret to success.
you laid out a lot of points that we embrace in our community, success circles. I mean, the nature of having huddles, connecting, having fun. Our tagline is dare to play bigger. Where play
Yeah.
is really a key part of that. And we just embrace the idea that every day is a game. Today's game is called whatever day today is. It's Tuesday, tomorrow's Wednesday. When we see it all as play and we go out there and find ways to play even more and have fun, it makes it all sustainable. Otherwise, it's a lot of work, right? And tracking numbers and doing these things on a daily basis can be very boring and daunting. But when you can integrate a lot of play into it and see it as a game, um, it's more sustainable and in your world very fulfilling. There's a lot of fulfillment
Yeah.
where you are and what you're doing, and that's extraordinary. Right. One of the last questions I'll ask you is if you could go back in time and offer some advice to the 18-year-old version of yourself, or perhaps offer advice to somebody about to go into college who's 18, maybe someone who's about to embrace a path toward career and focus, what's something you would tell that person or tell yourself?
One of the hardest lessons that I had to learn, and I got humbled repeatedly because I made this mistake over and over and over again. Don't be a jack of all trades.
Hmm.
Be an expert and be exceptional at one thing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Be the
Good
best
advice.
plumber, be the best architect, be the best chiropractor. Whatever you are going to professionally do, absolutely dominate and be the best, highest knowledgeable expert in that field. And if you become that person, you will have an abundance of business. But if you try and be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, you are not focused.
Yeah.
And which means if you're not focused, you're going to miss the ball.
Yes.
And so I made that mistake in trying to get into all sorts of side businesses and opportunities and things that were not directly related to payment processing. And it cost me millions of dollars, millions of
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah.
And so do one thing and be the very best at it you can be.
Extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. Ray, last question. So, how do people connect with you, engage with you? What's the best way? Email, website,
I
bring it
think
on.
email, I mean, I have a click to schedule. I respond typically within an hour, but it's just Rey, REY at total-apps.com. And love to chat, love to talk. Anybody I can help with, I'm a resource free. available anytime, except when I'm surfing.
Surfing. I love how a relationship oriented you are, how accessible you are, how amazing you are. I have a lot of extraordinary feedback,
Yeah.
advice given here. I'm sure a lot of our members will tap into it, especially the nature of like strengths and like hiring people on board with like strengths, knowing also what your zone of genius is. And I love the also metaphor of, scuba diving and also riding the wave, getting into flow, right? And we're getting into flow
Yes.
means really
Get your rhythm.
enjoying, get your rhythm and find your rhythm. It applies to not just surfing or scuba diving or swimming, it applies to life as well. Also, when you can get in your lane, stay in your lane, and find people to stay in their lane too as well. Bring the right people on board.
Yeah.
And really great. I'll put a link also into this podcast for people to do disc analysis, something we recommend to that. Enneagram, there's so many different tests out there, but certainly knowing your strengths is invaluable. This price is something I wish I knew about many years ago too when I first became an entrepreneur. Ray, this has been absolutely fantastic. For our audience out there, access this podcast interview, the summary, the transcript, even a mind map we'll have too, kind of summarizing these points, and Ray's contact at rulesforsuccess.com. It's been an absolute pleasure connecting with you today, and I look forward to future discussions as well also. Ray is at, once again, REY at total-apps.com, rulesforsuccess.com to access this mind map. And this has been fantastic. Thank you.
Wonderful.